Now I'm calling Ulrich Leben. Ulrich Leben is visiting professor quite every week in your school, and the Bart Graduate Center for Studies in Decorative Art, associate curator of the Wilson Manor Decorative Collection, apprenticeship as cabinet maker in Germany. He studied at the École du Louvre in Paris, at the Rheinische Friedrich Wilhelm Universität Bonn and the Freie Universität Bern. Curator of Bernard Molitor Cabinet Maker retrospective of the Musée de la Ville de Luxembourg, in charge of the historical refurbishment of the historic rooms in Palais Beauharnais, Paris. His publications include Molitor ébéniste from the Ancien Régime to the Bourbon Restoration, Le Faubourg Saint-Honoré, Paris 1996, Honoré Launier Cabinet Maker from Paris to New York, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Object Design in the 18th Century, the Getty Museum, Los Angeles, 2004, Symbols of Power, Napoleon and the Art of the Empire, of the Empire Style, 1800-1815, St. Louis Art Museum, Museum of Fine Arts Boston, Eugène de Beauharnais, Honneur et Fidélité at Hôtel Beauharnais, Cooper Hewitt National Design Museum, Rococo, The Continuing Curve, 1730 to 2008.
Thank you very much, Philippe. I'm going to try to compile to the idea, to this aim of showing the vision of Charles Percier and his idea of antiquity. And preparing this talk, it's kind of been very interesting to see that it really is wonderful to see that all these different communications we hear this afternoon kind of fit together. And what I will very briefly conclude in my short presentation is that the idea of a fragmented antiquity, which was so imaginative, put together by Percier in his wonderful views, and the genius. Yesterday I gave an introduction for some students who actually will guide visitors through the exhibition, and we thought that even so he's giving this wonderful capriccio of those fragments put together. We see somebody playing the mandolin on the top and some chaps having a glass of wine on the bottom. We found this very amusing by combining the pleasures of life and the aliveness with the vision of antiquity. So obviously somebody who was also really interested in current life. And when he came back to Paris, it's really interesting to see that one of the first activities he was looking at, and he got commissioned with, are these wonderful stage sets he did. And Madame Tenenbaum from the Louvre was able to retrack in the Fondation Pierre, which is a kind of an enigmatic place in Paris with very esoteric roots to get into, but they have wonderful collections about the Empire period, and she was able to track that incredible stage set drawing for Psyché, a ballet which was apparently given on stage with great success in the middle of the revolutionary turmoil. Of course, people needed advertisement, as we all know when things are going very bad. I show this today really in another context, because going into this picture we find literal quotations of things which would be only realized in the flesh later. So I will try to present that vision of actually Charles Percier being an achieved designer and architect already from very early on, and actually through the chance of getting a new society in Paris who had the money to put commissions in, and then later becoming the kind of first architect to the emperor, being able to fulfill and to realize his wildest dreams of creativity, which we study today so with so much interest. So after PhD, which was written by Hans 30 years ago, one of the very earliest commissions is the Salle de la Convention from in the Tuileries Palace, which was done with very simple means, very quickly. There was apparently a wonderful podium which was done with mahogany, of which other drawings exist, but the oldest decoration you see here is done with very simple means and with very cheap material in order to just prop it together very quickly in order to use I think it was a theater which was built in the Ancien Régime to use it as the conventional hall. So again, like a theatrical setting, and he really did this very well. We know that also later he would do the mise en scène and those designs for the ceremonies and big festivals for the empire, starting with the crowning of Napoleon or the distribution of the eagles, of which we have a wonderful design in the exhibition. I show here a tent for a circus which is coming from the Wrightson collection. It's at the museum and is also put into relation with the work of Charles Percier. But what is really interesting is this stretch between the early productions of his furniture, of which we have examples upstairs, and then the kind of formalization and becoming more conservative again, very monumental with such creations such as the throne of Napoleon. So when we look at those line drawings, which are also specialty of this architect, we see that he looks, as Jean-Philippe said very, very nicely in the beginning or in the first talk, he looked at antiquity, but actually also very much at what we call modern buildings from the Renaissance or from the Baroque in Italy. And there are also creations such as the médaillé, which belong to Vivant Denon, which is in the exhibition, very nicely shown, and those very wacky armchairs which go with it. They also belong to Vivant Denon. They are today in the Victorian Albert Museum, and apparently there was a bed which we're still looking for, and hopefully it has survived somewhere, because this is a kind of one-off creativity. And that brings me straight to the point we were able in the study day this morning to look at the extreme polished craftsmanship, polished in the clearest sense of the word, because there is this incredible silver inlay done by B&A in these pieces, which are outstanding for the craftsmanship and the technical perfection. But also something like this is really new, because in the modernity, and I want to ask this question really also with Jean-Philippe in a way, if he thinks that Percier would have been involved in the design of these armchairs. So at one point there was Denon, who had been one of the earliest French and European skilled artists who had been to Egypt, who had actually experienced Egyptian artifacts in life or on the spot. But what is actually very interesting is when you see that reclining chair, which has wonderful inlay and this kind of big seat, it actually resembles very much like a comfortable armchair of modern times. Not to speak of those tails, which actually kind of prefigure those, they prefigure like bentwood as we have it today in contemporary furniture. Now, when we look at this early stage, and I was able to scan this with the wonderful possibilities in which you see here in high resolution, I just want to highlight three things. What is very interesting, we have this armchair which is in the exhibition, one of those models. And when you look, this is 1792, the armchair, we can date about 1802, 1803. We have a stool with the same kind of legs. So here we can really clearly see that Percier brings back these incredible drawings, these incredible experiences from Italy. He has very well observed. He has these wonderful collections of ideas, and he applies them, but the idea is already existing straight after his return in 1792, and it's then when he gets the official commission to furnish the houses for the Consul and later Napoleon that he can really let free range to his inspiration. And that's for me a point which I would really go into also with the exhibition in the background in some study days which we are preparing you go with this exhibition. And it's very interesting to understand the perfection of the artist after his training at the Academy and the return from Italy. Right in the beginning, everything was kind of embryomatic. It was there, everything was there, and was just, he needed to be ignited to start. Now his incredible impact on the art world or on the creativity in Paris, can be also stated by these publications which he did, and Jean-Philippe quoted the book of modern architecture in Italy from 1798, and it's a book very interesting in the context of the monography of the Hotel Beauharnais, which obviously was not done with the collaboration of Percier nor Fontaine in 1803. They only came in at a later date in 1810 to finish off some rooms and renovate some rooms. But it's very interesting that, for example, in the Salon of the Four Seasons, of which I show you a view here in its new configuration after conservation, that we have the overdoors, which actually are straight copied out of the book of 1798, and it says in the text this is a door of a mansion nearby Il Gesù, and in fact it's a building from the Renaissance which was really copied in that building. So it shows that from the beginning on the visions of Percier, even if he didn't supervise a project directly, had an incredible impact in creativity in Paris at that time. So this is the book of the Palais Maison Édifice Moderne, and the same thing for this incredible fountain, which is in the same book, and this is in San Pietro di Vincoli. It's a well which has a kind of fronton. The same kind of element is used on a clock, and later also in the Palace of the Tuileries over a fireplace. And I could show you other examples where this kind of gable was really used, and it's a gable obviously from the Renaissance, which was used as a model from different, to be executed in different materials in Paris. So that's a very interesting place which Percier's work take, in the way that he uses immediately the medium of print to divulgate his ideas and to distribute them, and that they're apparently obviously picked up immediately in Paris, and later on, as you will see, in other places too. So once he got into the orbit of those wealthy nouveau riche people who were able to put in big commissions to him, he started with some private houses of friends of Josephine. She got the idea, she picked up on Percier and asked him to make designs for her house in Chantereine for furniture, which was done after the newest design cost a fortune and raised the anger of Bonaparte, who was actually in Italy in another campaign during that time. But it also kicked Percier off to get the commission for Malmaison, and which actually started then his really kind of big career with the emperor. What is interesting too is that from the revolutionary monuments, such as this wonderful drawing of a monument to the victims of the revolution, tu peux me dire le titre encore, parce que c'est Jean-Philippe who drove my attention to this drawing, which is incredibly important. It's a competition for a prize. Percier put in a bit, and he designs this monument with these very strange pillars. This is 1795, and then you find furniture like this appearing in Paris. This is Eugène de Beauharnais' desk, which is in a private collection today, which you were able to find, and this is a design for a library which he did for the Château de Compiègne much later. So we see that really from architecture the designs come straight into the realization of furniture, and that really from the beginning of the revolutionary period of this early design there is an impact in creativity. Now what we're looking at another room in the Hotel Beauharnais is that we have very elaborate decorations where ornament such as lotus flowers or lotus leaves are repeatedly used in the interior fitting, and that we think that something like the scrapbook, which is upstairs in the exhibition, had an incredible impact. We don't know yet how it really functioned, but it's possible that after the Napoleon really requested the work of Percier, that the workshop or the people with whom he worked would give ideas out to other people, which would then be copied and repeated and realized in projects all over the place in Paris. So this is the scrapbook, And there are several elements on these pages which really relate immediately to motifs which we find in the Hotel Beauharnais. Even so, we know that he didn't directly work in there, because by that time, 1803, 1804, he was no longer working on the free market. His workforce was really requested for Bonaparte and his big ambitious projects. So this is again one of those examples. You have those pillars on the walls, and then you look at these motifs in the book, and in several ideas you just think like it's really like copied straight away from the ornament book, and perhaps they were selling off drawings and examples. Now what would be very important is that these places which Percier created in Paris would be seen by many people coming from abroad. And in this respect, I wanted to just put a little spotlight on Germany, because when we know that the Hotel Beauharnais was sold to the King of Prussia as his pied-à-terre in Paris after the downfall of Napoleon, it was actually in the 1810s, from the mid-1810s on, in the 1820s, visited by German architects visiting, and who had also sometimes studied with Percier, such as Klenze from Munich, or Karl Friedrich Schinkel, who just came to visit Paris on one of his trips. And it's very interesting what they do afterwards when they return. And in this moment, Percier really becomes an international hero, or an international template, which will foster ideas or models for Europe, and will be living for a very long time. And even so, those creations which I show you here in the residence in Munich of the two thrones of the king of Bavaria, they're very different than this wonderfully balanced throne from, I think it's the one from St. Cloud, which is in the National Collections in France. We see that they had an incredible impact from the impact from Paris right into the whole of Europe. Now we have here an example. This is the chair from the Cabinet d'Argent in the Palais de l'Élysée. This is the swan chairs in the Hotel Beauharnais, probably by the Jacob workshop. And here we have Klenze picking up the idea of the swan armchair. He must have seen them either in the Élysée Palace or in St. Cloud or in the Hotel Beauharnais. This is the only three sets which are documented or known. And we see that they tried really hard, but they kind of reconfigured that armchair, and it lacks somehow the kind of balance, and it has a very different proportion than the French prototype. And that idea can even be pushed further on, in my opinion, when you look at something like those console tables, again by Klenze, both in the residence in Munich, and even the wallpaper. These are patterns which we all know from the fragment collections and from the ornament collections of Percier and Fontaine, but they have been used in a very, very different way. And they become like repetitive, and they become like a pattern which can be used all over and can really changes in time and in form. And I think it's very important to see that this language of ornament which Percier develops in the early years of the 19th century in Paris for a very high-end market will continue in other places, such in Germany, and will even a table attributed to Dagobert Peche, which was on the TIFAB some years ago. It owes something to this kind of flat carving which was executed in Munich. Now, it is very simple and easy to say, like, okay, embroidery can be repeated, can be executed offsite. These are embroideries, actually gold thread on silk velvet, which are made in Paris in the 1810s, and they have survived in Franconia in the Chateau of Ellingen. But we also know that this ornament was done very carefully in wood, and I show you here chairs which have been, where it has been chopped off, so you see the trace. And here it has to be replaced very carefully with wood in the due course of the restoration of the furniture in the Hotel Beauharnais. So this is very filigree ornament, all cut by hand. But of course, this ornament is also easy to reproduce mechanically. And that's what's coming in other countries. And I show you an example here from Chateau Rienicke in the outskirts of Berlin on the Wannsee. And it was for one of the royal princes of Prussia. And we have ornament on these buildings. And these ornaments can be either done in terracotta, so reproduced like easily, by casting them, but they can also be reproduced by stamping them into metal. And Carl Friedrich Schinkel was very interested in the mechanical reproduction of these kind of very systematic and very stylized ornaments, and he was one of the first to have them produced like semi-industrial. So it's very interesting what happens with this neoclassical ornament in Paris. And I was fascinated, and I always love to travel to American cities, because I found that in Hartford, on a business building, this wonderful kind of scroll which could just come out of the sketchbook from Percier, cast iron, and it survives today because some of this ornament, and this is not the best example from Home Depot, but you can actually today this kind of stamped material, which of course when you visit downtown pubs or sweatshops, you have these stamped ceilings. So it's very interesting that this kind of stylized ornament is actually giving itself very well for a semi-industrial or industrial production, which reaches with this kind of new language of making antiquity for use for the modern world something very interesting for the present day and in our surrounding, which is around us. So I hope that very kind of brief presentation has given you an idea and an insight in how the vision, and this kind of very modern vision of Percier still has an impact in our present world and still needs to have much more research done in order to assess and understand it. Thank you very much for your attention.